Hi, Reynolds Middle School. My name is Carla Reyes, and I will be your ESL specialist teacher this year for Prosper High School and Reynolds. So I will be a split campus teacher. What that means is I will have 1 week at PHS and 1 week at Reynolds, and just swap back and forth. I will let you know those dates as soon as I know what those dates are. I'll find a place that's easy for you to access those. But in the meantime, there's my email on the slide, as well as my cell phone number. You can also reach me through Google Chat. That's a great way to communicate with me. Because at the Reynolds campus, I will be all over the place. My plan is to push into English classes, but if you teach some other subject and you need help with an EL student, please reach out using either of those means: email, cell, or Google Chat. All of that is fine with me. A little bit about me, since I am new to your campus. I grew up in East Texas in a small town on a farm, and then went off to A&M, and now this is my 15th year in education. Of those 15 years, 13 of those I've either been the ESL lead teacher or some kind of assistance with EL students. And so I love teaching our international and EL students. This is my 7th year in Prosper ISD, my 2nd year as the ESL specialist teacher, and then my 1st year to be split between PHS and Reynolds. So I'm excited to be here and to work with my Reynolds family. A lot of times we assume that our kids are thinking when really they're thinking. And what do I mean by that? Is that they will look at you and they'll nod, they'll smile, they'll say yes, they'll say they understand, when we know that they don't, or maybe we don't know that they don't. It's not till they turn something in and they're like, oh, okay, this kid might need a little bit more assistance than what we initially assumed. Students will nod, they'll say yes, they'll smile because they don't want to be rude. And a lot of times they're scared or they don't know how to ask for help. So it's really important that we identify who our EL students are, and identify ways that we can help them. And that's what my role is for both campuses. You can see Prosper ISD, we know we're the fastest growing district in the state of Texas. And we can also see the growth of our ELs. So no, we do not have the most ELs in the state of Texas, but we are growing very, very quickly in that area. So 5 years ago, we had less than 300 versus this year, we're going to have over 1,000 ELs across the district. Here are some of the different acronyms that we like to use. You can pause this video and just kind of read through those, see if you know what they mean, see if they sound familiar. And here they are. Here's what the acronyms stand for. A few of them that I want to point out is that we no longer call them ELLs. A couple of years ago, they changed that to just ELs, English learners. So if you have been working with this population for a while, you'll probably say ELLs. I do that all the time, but they are now called ELs, English learners. Two more that I want to point out is down here in the bottom left is the BICS. That's the basic interpersonal communicative skills, and that's our social language. It takes students about 1 to 2 years to develop what we call their social language. So they can tell you what they did this weekend, about the movie that they watched, and they can have these conversations very easily with you, with their peers, and it looks like, oh, this kid's learned English really quickly. But then there's a different set of language skills. Over here in the top right is what's called the CALS, the Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency, and that's their academic language. And that takes 5 to 7 years to develop. And so that can be really hard for a student. So if you think about a student who's now learning harder vocabulary words or more specific words for their science class, let's say, for example, if that student doesn't know what that word is in their native language, it's going to be really hard for them to understand what that is in this new language. So we just want to be cognizant of the language that we're using, and if they understand it, and just to know the academic language. So for them to participate academically at a higher standard takes 5 to 7 years versus social language. So you may even hear a student say gonna, which is not really a word, but it's a slang word that sounds a lot like their peers. And so, but that's social language, and there's a difference between social and academic language. So we want to really push and drive that academic language and encourage them to learn that. The top 3 languages spoken at Reynolds, according to the end of last year, is Spanish, Korean, and Urdu. At the high school, it's actually Spanish, Farsi, and Korean. So it's just a little bit different at the different campuses. There are 14 other languages spoken at Reynolds Middle School. I thought that was really interesting. 14 different languages, and at the high schools, there's 28. And it's all in a name. What do I mean by that? I love that at Prosper, they really encourage you to greet students at the door, and this is a great way to learn that student's name. Some of them are very hard to pronounce. We know that. And so you can either try to pronounce it yourself or you can ask the student what their name is and they'll tell you. And if that means you need to write it down phonetically, then do it. Write it down so that you pronounce that student's name correctly. If they tell you an Americanized name themselves, then you're welcome to call them that. But please don't give them what we might label an American name because you're having difficulty using their correct name. So make sure you call them by what name they want to go by and that you say it correctly. And also addressing parents on the phone. Feel free to reach out to me if you need to call home and we can do that together. That way we address the parents culturally how they expect to be addressed. And just be aware of cultural differences and expectations. And so a lot of our international students or EL students, the cultures are very different. And so it might be that when you're talking to them that they don't make eye contact with you. And that's just not what their culture does. It's very different. And so it's not that they're being rude. It's that that's what they were grown up. That's how they were raised, is to not make eye contact or to look down. And that shows respect instead of disrespect. Also, if you want to high five a student or, side hug, which I don't know if we're doing any of that during COVID, but just be aware that cultures could be different of how they respond to you. It could be that they only call you miss and just say miss, and they never say your last name. They're not being rude. That's just what they did in their former culture. So just know that. If you have questions, let me know. It's always nice to know also what's going on in cultures around us and what our students may be celebrating at home. Different holidays, which could affect their sleep, their diet, what their activities at night. So we'll send out a few things about some of our big holidays, just so you're aware of what our students are celebrating so that you can celebrate with them or maybe make note of it or ask them about it and how it's impacting their life. These are some of my responsibilities for our campuses. And we'll go over them really quickly. So in this gray circle, my big role is to identify and notify you of who our EL students are. And so in Skyward, I've got a screenshot right here, is you'll have this bright green A that means at risk and this purple L for LEP. And so I will identify students based on their registration from school, or if they're coming in from another district or coming in from the elementary schools in Prosper. So I will identify them and let you know who those students are. So via email, Skyward, maybe I'll print some things for you if you like paper. So we'll work that out, but you will know who your EL students are. I will also be providing a few pull-out services, but mostly push into our English classrooms. And so you'll see me in classrooms with our beginner intermediate students predominantly. But again, if you teach a history class and you need help or you need ideas, please reach out and let me know so we can partner up and get that taken care of. I'll also plan on attending English PLCs predominantly, other subjects as I can, so that we can work on EL strategies and what works for them, state and compliance, testing, all of that, attending arts, and also some professional development and how best to reach our EL students and their parents. Team leads, I'll be sending out a Google form to you a little bit later this week so that you have time to meet with your teams first. But I just need to know when you're meeting and where you're meeting, and so that I can try to make a calendar and meet with you during your PLCs to work with you and your teams. This is how we identify students. You are a big part of this. In case something gets missed, you know to reach out to me. And this happened at the high school, and we'll go over it in just a little bit. But what initially happens is when a student registers at school, every student fills out a home language survey, this HLS. Any student who puts something other than English in the two questions that they're asked, what language is predominantly spoken by the student and what language is predominantly spoken at home, if any parent or student that's filling out that paperwork puts something other than English, we then move forward with getting information for that student, whether it's testing, paperwork from another district, out of state, whatever it may be. And so then Lost Links test is just a language test, and then I update Skyward accordingly. Did they qualify or not qualify? And then this year, this is new, we're using Success Ed. So last year we had all of our information in Elevation, and some of you might be rolling your eyes right now, and that's okay. But Success Ed is what the district was already using for special education services and 504 services. So you're already familiar with that paperwork. So it was a good transition period for us to go ahead and switch to that as well. So I'll update you on that once we have all of that settled and situated. Here are a couple of tips that you can use in your classroom. The biggest thing for our students is that you model what you're doing. And it's even the simple things like if you want them to open a book, you can just use your hands. Or if you want them to turn the page and then have the page number written on the screen, just model what you want them to do. If you want them to turn paper in, it's okay to take a piece of paper and as you're talking to the class, walk over there and put the paper in the tray or in the box. And so again, model what you are wanting them to do. They'll also look around the room and watch their peers and learn that information as well. It's really good for them to see you modeling that information too. Another great way to reach the needs of our ELs is by using visuals, and that's all over your walls as well as on your slides. And so fewer words, more visuals. And if you can color coordinate them, that makes it even easier. So if you're going to have information about water, notice my blues match and green. You know what color coordinating is, but use lots of visuals. It makes your slides look nicer, but it's also really great for our SPED students as well, not just ELs. So many words, so little time. We want to make sure that we maximize our time. We do want students to pick up academic vocabulary. We want them to learn that because that's what they're going to see all over testing and all over their work. So make sure you have like word walls and anchor charts and what your essential standards are. We want to connect that vocabulary to that essential standard so they're seeing it over and over again so that they can learn that academic vocabulary. Graphic organizers are nothing new. All of our subject areas are doing writing, so you can easily Google or you can reach out to me and we can get some graphic organizers. Could be sentence stems, sentence starters, could be fill in the blank. It's different for each kid. A lot of our online textbooks now have graphic organizers and have different sentence stems and paragraph starters for EL students, and so we can look at those as well. And then oral language, we want them to develop. We want our kids to feel confident in how they speak and how they sound when they speak. We also want them to develop their listening skills. So it's important for our ELs to participate in class discussion as best as possible. And that may look very different for a beginner versus an advanced high student. It could be that for your beginner that you give the student the question in advance, maybe the day before or at the beginning of class, and you communicate to them, I'm going to ask you this question. And then they can spend a little bit of time formulating their answer, or you can give them answer choices. So when you ask them that question, you've given them 2 or 3 choices, and then they pick the right one, hopefully. So there's different ways for you to get them to participate, but please don't ignore them because you feel sorry for them or you know it's hard. They need to participate in class. So randomize and rotate. Make sure you're including them in that. We want participation from our EL students. This is just from 2 middle school students last year and how teachers can help them. And both of them essentially said using Google Translate and more chance for them to talk in class as well and watching their behavior to see if they're struggling. And I just thought I loved their little answers. I thought they were very telling. What do you do if you have a non-English speaker in the classroom who maybe isn't marked in Skyward? It could be that I have to spend a week at a different campus. It could be that the kid, when they registered, their parents put English. And this is what happened at the high school last year. The parent put English because they were afraid that they might get in trouble or that their student might be different or go to a different campus or something. And so the student was not flagged for me to test or do anything to. And so the student went to his English class and then he was lost very quickly. And he was using Google Translate to ask his teacher for help. And he also used it to ask where the restroom was. And the teacher just thought, man, if he's using Google Translate, why isn't Carla helping or what's going on? And so she reached out to me and sure enough, his parent had put English. And so there's just different things that we can do to help that student if that situation arises. But it also could be that I just am not on your campus to help that student because of COVID. I have to spend 1 week at each campus. So just alert me so that I'm aware. The registrars and the counselors will let me know, but sometimes things happen and these students get missed. So just communicate with me and I'll do my best to fill you in. Also, if you will make sure that these students know where they're going, these campuses are a lot larger than what a lot of them are used to. So if you'll just partner them up with someone going to maybe the next class or going in that direction, or a student that you know, you trust, to help that student, we want them to feel comfortable and confident in where they're going. And please let them use their cell phone as a translator to communicate with you, or if they're needing it for their work. We don't want them to rely on that too heavily and for too long because we want them to pick up the language. But some of these students, when they first arrive, or if they're non-English speaking beginner level, they're going to need their phone to help them get settled. We know that our ELs want to fit in. We want to learn who they are, but we do not want to call them out, just like you wouldn't call out any other student. Just be really careful of how you would address them or talk to them, or even if you're trying to get to know them, just be careful in which ways that you do that. Here are some of our ESL resources that we have. This blue book right here, Dispelling Misconceptions, was our book study this summer. It was really, really good, easy to read, but just really informative of how sometimes we think one thing, but really it's probably the other when you're talking about cultural differences. Really great book. And the last thing I want to tell you about is Language Line. I used this a ton last year. It's a great way to communicate with parents, whether it's that you need assistance with a student or you need a student to turn something in, or you want to compliment a student for how hard they're working. We want these parents to be involved just as much as any other student. So Language Line is a service that the district pays for. So you call a number, you ask for a certain language, they get that translator, then they have hundreds of different languages. So far, I've not found a language that they don't have. And I think we have 42 different languages across the district. So you get a translator, and then you let that translator know what your message is if you have to leave a voicemail, or who you're calling and who you're addressing and who you are. So if they do answer the phone, they'll get that conversation started, and then it's just back and forth conversation using a translator. I'm happy to help you use that. It's easy, it's quick, and the parents really do appreciate being included with the school system, and they know the extra effort that you're going through to make sure that they are included, and they're always appreciative of that. So it's not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So I appreciate you watching this presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know. Again, my contact information is in an earlier slide, and I hope you have a fantastic year.